Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Former heavyweight champ George Foreman has divulged the advice that he imparted to Deontay Wilder in a recent phone call, which followed Wilder's crushing loss to Tyson Fury in their February 22nd rematch. So Foreman, he was among a number of names that put their hand up publicly to assist Wilder ahead of a third contracted fight, which a date and venue has yet to be confirmed due to the current pandemic. So what I'll do, I'll get to the quotes and then to a few thoughts, because there's quite a bit to unpack and discuss coming out of these statements from Foreman. So buckle up. Let's go. So Foreman, talking to TMZ, stated, "I told Wilder, I had a conversation with him. I said, now once a rematch is made, the title is vacant again. You got to look at it like that. You can't say, I want my title back. You've got a rematch, so your title is there. Just grab it again." I had a nice conversation with him. It was a two-way thing. I expressed some things that we needed to talk about, and he was interested in listening to them. And the guy is a very sensitive man. Deep down, he's just a sensitive guy, and we spoke on that basis. And Foreman, he was asked if it was more of a boxing technique conversation or general life advice. And he explained, it's all of the above, because I was in a position where I lost unexpectedly with the title in Africa. I only know what he's going through, only I. He's going to have to live with that, but I can show him how to live with that and come back better. We talked along those lines. And when he was asked if he believed Wilder can beat Fury in a third fight, he stated, not only beat him, he can do it easily. As a matter of fact, he could have won that boxing match. Things people take for granted, they go into trainers overwhelmed with this publicity, and they just don't know how to take advantage of that day. That's what happened to him. So those were George Foreman's statements to TMZ. So quite a bit to talk about. So I'll start at the top though. So Foreman's advice that Wilder needs to rethink how he approaches this fight, this third fight. Not that it's about winning his title back, but rather fighting for a vacant belt. And while that might seem to some that Foreman is sort of dancing on the head of a pin and splitting hairs with the approach, the thing that he's getting at is about mindset, that the belt is going to be up in the air again. So it's up to Wilder to go grab it, rather than a mindset of just reclaiming it, which might lead Wilder to dwelling on the rematch or something similar. I guess it does beg the question though with that approach, can Wilder make the subtle shift in mindset to fighting for a vacant belt? Remembering that a lot of his identity as a fighter, especially as a champion, has been tied up in the WBC belt, having that green belt, and even going as far as to name it Sophia, which was freed on February the 22nd. Foreman, he went on to say Wilder was receptive to hearing what he had to say, etc., that Wilder is also a sensitive man. So on being willing to listen to Foreman's advice, I think that's a good thing. It's a good sign, especially given that Wilder has been notorious for wanting to effectively do what he wants to do and not listen to anyone, not be willing to accept what people are saying to him or advising him to do. So perhaps on some reflection, if he's open to taking on board some advice and making some changes, perhaps he has humbled himself to some degree to the point where he's willing to take on some advice and grow and change and, be prepared, or prepare for the rematch, I should say, the trilogy fight, in a different way to the first two. And there are a few parallels between Wilder's loss to Fury and Foreman's to Ali. So bear with me here. So Foreman, like Wilder, regarded as a fearsome puncher, and a big part of his image was tied up in that, in him being seen to be unbeatable. So when he was taken apart by Ali, that certain aura, it disappeared. He was then seen as flawed and a beatable fighter. And that's what happened with Wilder to some extent. He already, though, was viewed as a flawed fighter, but he had the equalizer. He had a certain aura about him. And Foreman, he went into a dark place after that loss to Ali and was out of the ring for more than a year. But he did rebound. He had a stoppage win over Ron Lyle and then followed up against Joe Frazier. So those two fights after he lost, he came back and won by stoppage. So Foreman, he does know what it's like to lose on the biggest of stages, to feel the pain of a loss, and as he says, he is well placed to advise Wilder on how to deal with it. And he referenced Wilder being a sensitive person. And actually, this is no real secret. And you can sort of see sensitive as a few different things. But Wilder is an emotional sort of guy. He is sensitive to criticism, always has been. He's overreacted to statements. He's, taken things as slights and, had a chip on a shoulder, sometimes multiple chips on both shoulders. And Foreman knows that Wilder has got to keep his emotions and sensitive nature in check if he is to rebound in the third fight, especially knowing that Wilder's ego has been bruised to a huge degree after being beaten up by a so-called non-puncher. And remember, Wilder had declared himself the greatest of all time, the self-proclaimed baddest man on the planet, and then hardly fires a shot against Fury, but then comes up with a zillion excuses after the fact. Foreman knows that Wilder's got to section all that off, that he can't dwell on that, because if he can't get past it, that could, spell trouble for the trilogy fight. He has to start anew to some extent, as illustrated by his comments where he says he's going to have to live with that, but I can show him how to live with that and come back better. We talked along those lines. And importantly, Foreman has thrown out that bone of belief in Wilder that Wilder will need right now. There's a lot of people saying that, he can't beat Fury, that he just can't do it. But Foreman says not only can he beat Fury, he can do it easily. And no doubt that will lift Wilder's spirits in a time that many pundits are firmly writing him off as a one-trick pony that will again be dealt to by Tyson Fury. And Foreman, he actually isn't the first to speak positively of Wilder's chances. Noted trainer Buddy McGirt also stating recently only minor adjustments are needed. And to many, that sort of sentiment after seeing that second fight will be seen as people trying to hype Deontay Wilder up, etc., or maybe get into his camp or have some sort of involvement. I've seen a number of people sort of poo-poo what Buddy McGirt was saying. But do remember that it was less than a year ago when Anthony Joshua lost to Andy Ruiz Jr. And afterward, the vast bulk of pundits, and a lot of fans too, doubted Joshua had any shot in the rematch. They doubted Joshua could adapt and adjust. And sure, while Wilder doesn't have the sort of boxing pedigree that an Anthony Joshua does, you don't get as far as Deontay Wilder without having something about you. Sure, his technique is a bit sloppy and ragged, the footwork, the balance, but he hasn't got as far as he has without having some good tools to rely on. And certainly improvements, they've got to be made. He looked terrible going backwards, and he doesn't have much of an inside game. That much is clear. So some of that will be hard to fix. There's no doubt about that, especially at this advanced stage of Wilder's career. But he can do some things better. He can tie up better. But it does remain to be seen how much he can actually improve. And also, more importantly, perhaps the sort of game plan he's going to look to implement. Knowing that Fury, he can work off the front foot, he can also work off the back foot. But not only that, we haven't seen Fury working as a southpaw for any length of time in the first two fights. But even making minor adjustments and boxing better in the third fight, there's another open question with that. Can Deontay Wilder handle the occasion? Twice now he's failed to deal with the occasion, saying the moment got to him for the first fight and then throwing up a myriad of pathetic excuses after the second. And boxers often say the biggest part of a fight is the mental aspect. And how does Wilder deal with the pressure of the moment for this third fight, where arguably there's going to be even more pressure on him to perform, given his underperformance or perceived underperformance in the first two fights? And a lot of fans regard Tyson Fury as having won the majority of the 19 rounds that the pair have shared together. Some believe it's as high as 17 rounds. So it remains to be seen in regards to George Foreman, what sort of role he will play in the preparations for a third fight. Is he going to be involved for more than just a phone call? And to be honest, I hope he is, because the third fight, it needs some fresh storylines. And having Foreman in camp and some of the parallels with Foreman's loss to Ali, it's going to generate some publicity. But publicity won't win Wilder the fight. Adjustments will. So too his mindset. But can he put the loss behind him? Can he really own it and decide to make changes in how he approaches the fight, etc.? If anything, this extra time he will get from the pandemic is arguably a good thing. That is, if there is changes happening in camp to the game plan and how they approach this third fight. Because if they don't make changes and it ends up being JD saying Wilder just has to execute better, then it's just deja vu. So George Foreman, his comments, what do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.